Hi and welcome to Choose Agape. I'm Catherine Bennett and I want to talk today about simplicity but also experts. I was recently asked for my opinion on something and was told, well, you studied philosophy, maybe you can arbitrate between us and see who's right. The thing is that my studies in philosophy actually took me further from truth and not towards it. Yet for quite some time, the fact that I'd studied philosophy at postgraduate level gave me an arrogance that I knew better. I would dismiss some simple wisdom that my dad shared with me because I was pretty sure that it contradicted something Bertrand Russell or A.J. Ayer had said. Religious claims are meaningless, Dad. They can't be verified empirically. I was an overeducated idiot who had no real life experience, and my dad knew that and rightly ignored me. My dad at almost 90 is one of the wisest people I know. He was pulled out of school himself at 14 because basically education was a luxury that his family couldn't afford. His own father couldn't read or write, my grandfather, but he was a fabulous storyteller, a born storyteller, and that's something that my dad has also inherited. And both of them at various points in their life were called simple. My dad is far from simple-minded. He is, I would say, simple-hearted, but that's no bad thing. In fact, I think we need more of that in today's culture. To say that someone is simple is considered an insult, yet many people miss God in our culture today, not because of his complexity, but because of his simplicity. The more complex a thing is, the more it can be broken into constituent parts, and God is not a being amongst many, but being itself. God is not composed of parts, so therefore cannot decompose. Simple things are often the most beautiful things, and therefore they're things that fascinate us. Things like fire or the colour purple or a wave. You can't take them apart. We need simple things, perhaps more now than ever. The so-called age of enlightenment has given way to a kind of scientism today that seems to be responsible for a breakdown in common sense. It's blinding us to simple truth, or indeed to recognition of truth itself, and therefore to recognising God himself. Look, science is great, it's fascinating. The Catholic Church has always held it in high regard, as highlighted in Gaudium et Spes from the Second Vatican Council, where it says, if methodological investigation within every branch of learning is carried out in a genuinely scientific manner, and in accord with moral norms, it never truly conflicts with faith. God doesn't contradict himself, and God wrote nature and wrote scripture. And so an investigation of nature reveals God to us. So science is all good, but this idea that scientific knowledge is the only meaningful kind of knowledge and everything else is meaningless has led to a kind of insanity, which leaves ordinary people outsourcing things revealed to us through our nature to experts. Only a biologist can tell us what a woman is, as if a woman is nothing more than her biology. Only a critical race theorist can tell us whether we're racist or not. Only a school teacher can educate my child. Is it any wonder that teachers report parents coming into the school, asking the school how they're going to stop their child from sitting in their room all day, watching porn and playing video games? I read a post on Twitter the other day from a father of 7 kids who said that in the 11-year gap between him having his first child and the most recent child, the advice of experts on child rearing has changed and then flipped back again. Best advice, he said, do what your granny did. The implication being that it's unlikely that granny consulted books by experts, but acted instead on natural rhythms and instincts. And I love that. Assuming your granny's not a sociopath, it's great advice for a new parent. It allows them to be more in tune with their own nature as a mother and as a father. And this is the danger of taking science and so-called experts out of their proper place, and there is a proper place, of course, for science and for expertise, but taking them out of their proper place and deifying them, it disconnects us, it reduces us, it renders the already dim mirror through which we see the face of God even more opaque. What's happened to us? Some ideas, as George Orwell said, are so stupid that only intellectuals would believe them. Serious people in power today cannot define what a woman is. Imagine declining to answer a question because you're not an expert in the field. In the field of what? Being a human being. How little we trust ourselves, how little we trust our creator. We look to science to tell us about our origins, and what do we find? We find a beautiful and wonderful explanation of a cell. But there is much we do not and cannot find out from science alone. It's also true that a scientific explanation can at the same time be true and less meaningful and less true to our experience, even if it is true in a sort of forensic way. What's the first thing that we notice about water? Is it that it's two atoms of hydrogen joined to a single atom of oxygen? Or is it that it's wet? In our modern secular world, we struggle to account for things that we cannot explain in a scientific way. You see this in the way in which the creation stories in Genesis are often rejected, believing that the theory of evolution has refuted them. Now that we have this complex understanding of the universe, we can do away with simplistic stories from the Bible. But whilst we as Catholics would say that the creation stories are indeed a myth, that is not to say that they are false. Sometimes something is so true that in order to penetrate, it needs not to be presented in forensic detail, but wrapped in a simple story. Excuse me. Think of the story of the boy who cried wolf. Was there really a boy who lived on a hill guarding sheep and who called to the villagers below that the wolf was prowling around? Yes, no, maybe. What might he have looked like? Has anyone found the skeleton of this boy? Have they examined it? How old would he have been? Where is this so-called village? That level of detail doesn't matter, and to demand that it does can mean that we miss something deeper, something truer. See, wrapped in this story are a set of deeper truths, the truth that if we deceive people, they will lose faith in us, that communities are built on a relationship of trust, that a life of deception and dishonesty will ultimately devour us, that evil or danger lurks constantly around and we have to watch for it. These truths about the human condition and more are expressed through this story precisely because they are so important. This is why Jesus spoke in parables and why over 2,000 years later, we still recall them, we are transfixed by them, we meditate upon them, we recognize ourselves in them because they are perennial. It is precisely because of their simplicity that they have meaning and that they connect. What does 1 billion years even mean to any of us? We can't possibly comprehend it, but we can comprehend a single day. And scripture should speak to us in a way that we understand. It speaks to all people at all times across all places, not just to post-Enlightenment eggheads. Why would scripture read like a scientific textbook? And who'd read it if it did anyway? Through scripture, the truth about who we are in relation to God, to his creation and to one another is revealed. So what if science hasn't found the so-called Garden of Eden or the fossilized remains of Adam and Eve? It's not even a little bit important. In terms of meaning, in terms of what we can really understand and how we can really relate. We dispense with the creation myths in Genesis at our peril. We dispense with common sense at our peril. Our culture throws itself around us like a giant spider's web. And then if a fly does escape its meshes, it throws nasty names at it like simplistic, narrow-minded, fanatical, extremist. A simple faith and humble trust in God is none of those things. It's simply happiness, but the culture's jealous of a happiness it can't understand or produce, and so it resorts to sneering. When it seems like things are so complicated that you daren't even open your mouth to speak, it's worth remembering these wise words, again from the wonderful Peter Kraft. Life, we say, is so complicated. No, it isn't. We make it complicated. Cars and computers and codes are complicated. Birds and bees and beaches are not. Life is wonderfully simple. There is good and there is evil. Love goodness. There is truth and there is falsehood. Love truth. There is beauty and there is ugliness. Love beauty. There is life and there is death. Love life. There is love and there is hate. Love love and hate hate. There is honesty and there is dishonesty. Love honesty. And then you'll be deeply happy and you will know that you have chosen rightly and that life does not have to be complicated. But you'll only know it if you do it.